How's it going, everyone? I am the Shaz here, starting a new little video series breaking down cards by groups, whether they be Muse, Aqua, Niji, Initial, Gacha, Fest, you name it, we'll cover it. We'll be going over both URs and SRs in this series, so you can expect to hear a lot in the way of analysis. Outside the basic stat analysis, we'll be breaking down tap active abilities, passive abilities, live show active abilities, or as I like to call them, LSAs, common roles for each of the cards, and if any of these cards create synergistic pairs with others. In this first video, we'll be going over the initial Muse URs, and I will be discussing each of these cards as if this is the first copy of the card you've pulled. I'll be going over these cards the way they'd be arranged if they were sorted by rarity, starting with Honoka. First things first, let's cover some of the terms that I will be using frequently in this video, which I use in a lot of other videos as well. When I talk about base appeal, base stamina, or base technique, this refers to the stats of the card at max level, 80 for URs, 60 for SRs, and if you have all the stat nodes unlocked in that particular card's practice screen. These base stats are under the assumption that all cards are at bond level 1, so there will be slight differences between players since an increase in bond level does give a small stat gain to all of that idol's cards. Crit rate will refer to the percentage chance that a card has to trigger a critical scoring tap, which scores for 50% more than a tap marked as great. Crit rate is determined by a card's technique stat, meaning the higher the stat, the bigger the chance to crit. Tap actives refer to the abilities that have a chance to activate or trigger whenever that particular idol has a tap opportunity. These tap actives are denoted by this portion of the card info here when looking at a card. Passive abilities refer to the benefits that each card provides passively. Most times, I will reference a card's tap active and passive abilities starting at skill level 3, which is the highest skill level you can get to with only one copy of a given card. You can look up what a card's passive ability is here by clicking on the little icon shown on screen. Finally, right below that, you will see the card's live show active ability. Most of these will activate upon a certain condition occurring and only have a chance to activate. I covered this in 2 separate videos, but I'll reinforce a few terms here as well. When I refer to a card being a frontliner, those are cards that will be in your main scoring strategy, as most players utilize a single 3-card formation to do all of their scoring. Frontlines normally consist of 2 high appeal, high scoring cards, and 1 sustain card, either a healer, shielder, or, in a very rare case, a damage reducer. Damage reducers are less desirable than stamina healers or shielders simply due to the fact that damage reducers rarely have a way to keep your stamina in the green zone, which gives your cards full scoring value. Once your stamina drops into the yellow, your cards will only score 80% of full value per tap, and if you drop into the red, your cards will only score 60% of full value. The term Backliner refers to a card that you would slot in as one of your remaining 6 cards not in your main scoring strategy. These cards will have a variety of stats and abilities, whether it be boosting your team's appeal, stamina, technique, an increase in the scoring of your crit taps, a chance to revive if you lose all stamina, SP gauge gain, etc. If you want a more detailed look at Backliners, I have a video linked in the description below. The first card we will go over is the first Honoka UR, referred to as either Initial Honoka, Honoka 1, Honk 1, or Fashionable Romance Honoka, which is an elegant attribute guard type card. She has a base appeal of 44-46, tied with several other initial URs for the lowest appeal from the initial UR set. Her stamina stat is what you would expect out of most guard type cards, being her highest stat at a base 66-63. Her technique stat is the lowest of Honoka's 3 stats, coming in at 36-69, and a low crit rate of 10.88%. Her tap active is the weakest of all sustain cards, a damage reduction tap active. Why is the ability weak? Unlike the more desirable sustain cards, who either have a stamina heal or a stamina shield ability, the damage reduction tap active does not utilize Honoka's strongest stat attribute, her stamina. It just reduces the damage taken by 12% at skill level 3 for the next 10 notes, which doesn't lend very well to keeping your stamina in the green. Her passive, on the other hand, is quite good, providing an increase in stamina to all other cards you are using other than her by 4.6% at skill level 3. Her live show active, however, is very dependent on how many appeal chances the song has, as if it activates at the beginning of an appeal chance, it will heal your stamina equal to 20% of this card's stamina. This ability only has a chance to activate at a 30% rate. The full kit of the card, stats and abilities combined, makes this card a primary example of what players refer to as a stamina stick, a card that you include strictly to increase the total stamina of your team. Because her tap active is weak, you'll rarely ever run her as your main sustain card, but she will definitely see a lot of use outside of that as a backliner. The next UR is Ellie's first UR, known as Initial Ellie, Ellie 1, or Wedding Dress Ellie. She is a pure attribute guard type card that is vastly different from Honoka. First, she has an abnormally high base appeal for a guard type at 5181, a very low base stamina at 2964, and a very high base technique stat at 6663, giving her an astounding 34.6% crit rate. The abilities on the card itself are a bit lackluster considering Ellie's stats. Her tap active has a chance to recover 26% of her own stamina at skill level 3, which doesn't do particularly much healing considering her abysmal stamina stat at limit break 0. Her passive ability increases the stamina of other cards in her strategy by 6% at skill level 3, which, as we will get to in a bit, doesn't help that much either. Her live show active, however, is pretty rare, as only 6 total cards in the JP version have this ability, which, if activated at the beginning of a live, will recover stamina equal to 15% of your total stamina if your stamina happens to reach 0. The full kit of this card normally pushes Ellie 1 into frontline duty, as she, along with Yo's initial UR, are the best scoring guard type cards out of the initial set. She is what a lot of players would consider to be an offensive sustain card, since the thing she does best is help you get higher scores. This is in direct contrast to Honoka 1 in that her stats don't really help you score, but more so try to focus on keeping you alive. Next up we have Kotori's first UR, commonly referred to as Inishokotori, Kotori 1, or Kaputori. A cool attribute voltage type card, her stat line is pretty mediocre for that of a voltage type. She has the same base appeal and base stamina at limit break 0, coming in at 4446, but is balanced by a higher base technique stat, which comes in at 5928, giving her a 32.44% crit rate. Her tap active provides a voltage gain increase to all other members by 5.6% for the next 5 notes at skill level 3, providing a slight scoring boost to all other cards in her strategy if she is being used as a primary scorer. Her passive ability increases the appeal stat of all members by 3.6% at skill level 3, which is one of the better passives you can find on a voltage type card. Her live show active is very unique, as if you are able to activate it upon using your SP gauge, she provides an appeal increase of 10% to all members for the next 15 notes. This Inishokotori UR is what I would deem the first flex card. Usable as a scorer if she is one of your higher appeal cards, but if you happen to have a card that scores better than her on a given song, can also be a very good backliner to help boost your overall scoring for things like SBL and voltage rankings during exchange events. She is also a pretty good card to use in a guest slot because of her appeal buff to all cards' passive ability. We finish up the Otonokizaka second years by talking about Umi's first UR, known as Initial Umi, Umi 1, or Summer Festival Umi. A Smile attribute SP type card, her stat line is unusual for her typing. Umi comes in with a whopping 6663 base appeal, 2963 base stamina, and 5181 base technique, giving her a 15.24% crit rate. Her tap active is an SP gauge gain increase for all members by 5.6% for the next 10 notes at skill level 3, which, in the grand scheme of things, is not a particularly great ability unless it's for a specific circumstance. Her passive ability is also quite mediocre as well, as she only provides a technique buff to other Smile attribute cards by 4.6%, which in very small cases means she only buffs her own technique. Her live show active is also, from a meta perspective, relatively poor, as if you activate this ability upon switching strategies, increases the SP gauge gain of all members by 10% for the next 15 nodes, activating at a 30% rate. The lack of strength in Umi-1's kit of abilities comes as a direct result of this card being a very good Smile attribute scorer. In most instances, she will be a frontline scorer for Smile attribute songs. However, in the rare instance that this is not the case, she still has a lot of use as a member of your team's Center 3 for your SP gauge scoring, as her high appeal and technique can provide some very big SP gauge scores. We finally get to our first year, Rin, also known as Initial Rin, Rin 1, or Moonlight Rin. A natural attribute SP card, this Rin suffers from some pretty average stats. A matching 48-84 base appeal and stamina with a base 50-38 technique, leaving her with a 29.82% crit rate. Her tap active doesn't particularly match her typing very well, as it provides a skill activation rate up of 3.6% for all members for the next 5 nodes at skill level 3. Her passive ability increases the technique of other cards in her strategy by 6% at skill level 3, and her live show active, if activated at the start of an appeal chance, increases the SP gauge gain of all members by 5% for the remainder of the live, activating once at a 30% rate. This Rin is currently the only card with this live show ability, even on JP, which is 5 months worth of cards ahead of the global server. Unfortunately, Rin's first UR is very situational. Unless you're farming Bond for her or have the need for a specific Center 3 card while playing a natural attribute song, she lacks the necessary punch required to be a permanent frontline scorer. Also, due to her passive and live show active, her kit also doesn't provide much benefit as a card to strictly backline, unless, as I stated earlier, you need her to maximize your SP gauge usage by having her as a card in your Center 3. Next, we get to Knuckles. Tomato. I mean Maki's first UR, known as Initial Maki, Maki 1, or Scarlet Royal Maki. A cool attribute SK type, this Maki UR is a rare breed, an SK type card with an enormous 71-13 base appeal, 25-13 base stamina, and 51-81 base technique, giving her a 15.24% crit rate. Her tap active and passive abilities both revolve around scoring, as her tap active provides an appeal buff to all members by 5.6% for the next 5 nodes at skill level 3, and her passive increases the appeal of all other cool attribute cards by 4.6% at skill level 3. Her live show active, if activated at the beginning of an appeal chance, increases the skill activation rate of all members by 1.7% for the remainder of the live, activating once at a 30% rate. What does this all mean? Well, depending on how many copies of her you've pulled and what the rest of your card pool looks like, Maki is another card that falls into flex territory. A low limit break Maki 1 can provide a sizable appeal boost when being backlined for other cool attribute cards that score better than her, like Fest Karen, Magical Time Nozomi, or Veggie Wonderland Yohane, or can be used in the front line as a primary cool attribute scorer. Now, let's move on to Nozomi's first UR, known as Initial Nozomi, Nozo 1, or Night Parade Nozomi. A Smile attribute SK type card, this, along with Rin's UR, suffers a little bit from stats not matching her card typing or abilities. Her base appeal is at the tied low of 44-46, her base stamina is unusually high at 66-63, and her base technique is low for an SK type card, coming in at 36.99, leaving her at a paltry 10.88% crit rate. Her tap active increases the skill activation rate of all other members by 3.6% for the next 5 nodes at skill level 3. Her passive increases the technique of all members by 3.6% at skill level 3, and her live show active actually matches that of Maki 1. If activated at the beginning of an appeal chance, increase the skill activation rate of all members by 1.7% for the remainder of the live, activating once at a 30% rate. The full body of the kit, stats and abilities, makes this card much like Rin's first UR, very situational. While you would use this card in something like SBL to help possibly win you some skill activations MVPs, this card doesn't really do anything other than boost your overall stamina pool if you use her. Her use as a member of your Center 3 is also quite limited, as her appeal and technique, the two stats that determine a card's power for the SP gauge, are both low as well. The last of the first years to go over, we have Hanayo's first UR, known as Initial Hanayo, Initial Pana, Pana 1, or Cherry Blossom Pana. An active attribute guard type card with another interesting stat line compared to her abilities. She starts with equally low base appeal and stamina, both at 44-46, but a higher than usual base technique of 59-28, giving her a crit rate of 32.44%. Her tap active provides a shield equal to 26% of her stamina at skill level 3. Her passive ability is one of the best for guard type cards, increasing the stamina of all members by 3.6% at skill level 3, and her live show active is, well, it's not great. If activated at the beginning of a live, her LSA adds 10% of her low appeal stat to the SP gauge, which, since it's a weaker skill that can only activate once, is quite poor. The card itself, however, does fall into flex territory. If you don't have a strong sustain card that can heal or shield you for a lot, this Hanayo UR will do just fine, giving you a tiny extra scoring boost than most other guard cards because of her high crit rate. Even if you can't utilize her as a main sustain card, however, she fits perfectly into the backline as a stamina stick, even if her base stamina is low, since she increases the stamina of all members. Pairing her with a couple of other stamina sticks, like Honoka 1 or Chica 1, would provide great benefit in enlarging your overall stamina pool. Finally, we get to the world's #1 idol, Nico. Known as Initial Nico, Nico 1, or Devil Nico, this UR is an elegant attribute voltage type UR. Much like the other voltage type card from this set, Kotori, Nico suffers from a below average stat line for a voltage type card. She has the low 44-46 base appeal, a much larger than normal base stamina at 56-31, and a base technique stat of 47-42, giving her a 13.95% crit rate. Much like Kotori, however, Nico makes up for her mediocre stat line by having a very good set of abilities. Her tap active gives a voltage boost equal to 31% of her own appeal at skill level 3, but her passive and live show actives are what make this card good. Her passive is one of the best for scoring cards in the game, as it increases the appeal of all cards in the same strategy by a whopping 6% at skill level 3, and her LSA, if activated at the start of an appeal chance, increases the appeal of all members by 5% for the rest of the live. As far as an overall evaluation of this card, well, it's a bit tricky, because she's not what I would consider a true flex card. If she's one of your highest appeal cards when you start out the game, you will be just fine getting through a bunch of content using her as a primary scorer. However, she can't just get thrown in a backline because the only ability that she has that affects other cards would be her LSA, and even that depends on the number of ACs that there are in the song. You do end up seeing her as a card that gets added in the backline for voltage rankings during exchange events and for voltage runs during SBL, however, specifically for songs with early appeal chances, where her live show active can actually be pretty OP. Even if she doesn't see a lot of use for you, her passive and live show active make her one of the better guest cards in the game. And that completes my first card analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when I post my next video. If you would like to support my work, share the video, follow me for free on Twitch over at twitch.tv/IamTheShaz, where I stream 5 times a week, and join my Twitch channel Discord. Links will be in the description below. If my Twitch and or YouTube content is worthy enough and you would like to support monetarily, you can subscribe to or give bits on my Twitch channel. It is never required of you as a viewer, but always greatly appreciated. Finally, a big thanks to my Twitch subs, CO SIFAS, Shut It, 86 Romy, Minomone, Poker Dottie, AJ Bailey 3, Kotaro-chan, JMSYNR, Medeer Cutie, and Super Penguin 7, most of whom have gifted subs in the channel as well. I've been I Am the Shaz, take it easy, be nice to each other, and I'll see you all next time.